Hello, how are you all? Good evening. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I have a little bit of an intro script on my phone, but it says iPhone unavailable. Try again in 1 minute. This is the first time my phone sabotaged me. So hopefully it'll be ready in a minute. But this is Beyond Baroque. We are a nonprofit literary arts organization based here in Venice since 1968. But in the building we are in now, this is the old original Venice City Hall building. And Beyond Baroque, the poets and writers and artists took it over in the 70s. And since then, it's been a place for community, for art. As you can see in the walls, when you walked in, you probably saw Bob Brenneman's Horizons exhibition, currently on display till this Saturday. We have our gallery upstairs if you want to browse around after the conversation. Tonight's program is Power in Our Names, the urgency of art, activism, and sisterhood, with our three wonderful panelists for the evening. Before I introduce our panelists, I just want to say a few words about the organization, but first start with land acknowledgement. Acknowledge our presence on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Tongva peoples. As the first peoples of this land, we acknowledge the wrong done to indigenous peoples through colonialism and genocidal practices. As an arts organization, we are committed to uplifting their communities, stories, and cultures. We've continued the 55-year legacy of Beyond Baroque through our extensive programming, from readings with emerging and established authors to craft workshops in poetry and nonfiction. We're also offering opportunities for artists at different stages of their career. We currently are accepting applications to the Linda J. Albertano Fellowship, named after the poet and performance artist who was instrumental to the scene of LA poets, especially here at Beyond Baroque. You can find more info about the fellowship and some of the events that we have coming up in March, as well as the intensive workshops we offer both online and in person. Tonight, our panelists are coming here to Beyond Baroque to speak about the work and activism, but also Vanessa German's artwork is currently on display at Frieze Los Angeles, that you can check out in a few places throughout the west side of LA. I'm sure she'll share more about that during the conversation. We want to thank you all for being here tonight. And we do have books available across the hall in our bookstore, where you can also inquire about becoming a member to support Beyond Baroque's mission. And you do get some perks from our programming. Most of them are free, but sometimes we do have paid events, and you get into those for free or get a discount on some merch items as well. And you're supporting this great space of art in the West Side. Lastly, just a huge shout out to our team, Beyond Baroque, from Eric to our directors, Jimmy, Quentin, Michelle, and our bookstore assistant, Genesis Perez, for making it all happen almost every week. Lastly, just for tonight's program, our panelists will first be in conversation for a while, and then we will open it to Q&A with the audience and conclude with some book signing and a bit of reception outside. So the powerful women speaking tonight are Dr. Tameka Cage Conley, Vanessa German, and Patrisse Cullors. Did I pronounce that right? Awesome. Just a little bit of info of each of them. Dr. Tameka Cage Conley is a graduate of the fiction program of the Iowa Writers Workshop, where she was awarded the Truman Capote Fellowship and the Provost Postgraduate Visiting Writer Fellowship in Fiction. Her work is published in Plowshares, the Virginia Quarterly Review, the African American Review, and elsewhere. Vanessa German is a self-taught citizen artist working across sculpture, performance, communal rituals, immersive installation, and photography in order to repair and reshape disrupted systems, spaces, and connections. The artist's practice proposes new models for social healing, utilizing creativity and tenderness as vital forces to reckon with the historical and ongoing catastrophes of structural racism, white supremacy, heteropatriarchy, resource extraction, and misogynoir. And Patrisse Cullors is an author of the New York Times bestseller When They Call You a Terrorist, as well as an educator, artist, and abolitionist in Los Angeles. She's the co-founder of the Crenshaw Dairy Mart and has been on the front lines of the abolitionist movement with Black Lives Matter, Justice LA, Dignity and Power Now, and Reform LA Jails. Cullors is also the founder of the Center for Art and Abolition. Please, a round of applause for our panelists, and let them take it away. Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm extremely honored and delighted to see all of you. First, I want to thank Vanessa and Patrisse, beauties, abolitionists, artists, leaders. And I also want to thank the Oxford College of Emory University. I am assistant professor of English and creative writing there, and I also direct the creative writing program there. And my presence here is because of that position. And so I want to thank my division head, Erin Tarver, for her support of my work here tonight. Thank you. I want to open with a heart of gratitude. Thank you more to Vanessa and to Patrisse for sharing and holding space with such power, beauty, and rarity. I am grateful for all the wounds you have survived and all the wonders you have made with your hands, hearts, activism, and art. The communities you have nurtured, sometimes to great applause, but so often in the dark, in the shade, the only light your own. Thank you both for moving mountains that have been reduced to hills in the imaginations of so many people who have no idea what all you do, have done, and will continue to do. I want to speak clearly that I see you, that I am grateful to you. And in that spirit, thank you, Vanessa, and thank you, Patrisse, as I speak these ancestral names to saturate our space with love, wonder, human possibility, and a split earth better than the one we inherited, because we have chosen to do this work and because they first did it and made a path, cleared a path, and beckoned us to walk through, walk up and down. Audre Lorde, Toni Morrison, Harriet Tubman, Lucille Clifton, Bebe Moore Campbell, June Jordan, Gwendolyn Brooks, Fannie Lou Hamer, Zora Neale Hurston, Addie Mae Collins, Carol Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, Cynthia Wesley, Anna J. Cooper, Mahalia Jackson, Bell Hooks, Aretha Franklin, Ntozake Shange, Valerie Boyd, Lorraine Hansberry, Wanda Coleman. Thank you, Patrisse, Vanessa, sisters. It was a Sunday, Vanessa, when I saw your post featuring Heart Overhead from your latest work, primarily in rose quartz, a stone known and celebrated as vibrational with unconditional love, healing, compassion, peace, and calm. I looked and stared at Heart Overhead as if I could not believe what I was seeing. How was this possible? While staring, I think my mouth flew open. Once I could unfreeze. I sent it to my LA-based sister of more than 2 decades, Cassandra Lane. I needed another witness. I must have perceived some mirrored image of myself, some soul of me, some brokenness, something split, where the most tender thing was visible, where the crown chakra is, yet somehow higher, above the self, yet part of the self, a monument to the world of impossibility and possibility, teetering also between worlds, like Toni Morrison's pilot, who had one foot in this world and without a navel to her name, one foot in the next. How did this magic, this offering, this wonder come into being? You wrote something so profound in the post that features Heart Overhead that it bears repeating. Every image that you see of this rose quartz body of work is a prayer. Every bead of every sculpture and every image is a love song, end quote. How did this prayer make it to and through stone to represent the human heart? How did you get to it? And how did it get to you?
Thank you. Thank you, Camille. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for being here. The beginning isn't always where we think it was. The beginning is never an object, right? For me, in this work, thank you all for your grace. It's like I want to say, I have to begin with the fact that I was raised in Los Angeles. I'm from LA, and my mother raised us to be artists. So my mother raised us to be creative and basically to be brave.
Yes.
You know, like we were kids. These are my sisters. This is Meredith, and this is Jocelyn, and that's my nephew. My mom died. My nephew did get to know her. And so my mother raised us to speak for ourselves and to make things. So we would have to go to the LA County School Board and do the 3 minutes and give speeches. Like if there was something that we didn't like or want, she was like, you have to go and you have to speak and you say the thing you need to say. And then if you need to figure out stuff in the world, you just have to figure it out, right? And so that means I'm approaching my life and the world in a way that is the keyhole is through my own power.
Yes.
Right? And so then I'm looking at everything in the realm of infinite possibility. I'm looking at everything in relationship to its connections. I'm experiencing everything as profoundly divine and wondrous also,
Yes.
right?
Right.
And so the beginning is there, which means the beginning is my mother and my mother's mother. And so what I believe is that I'm actually from an ancient line.
That's right.
Of humans, specifically Black women who were makers, witches, midwives, gardeners, speakers of the earth and speakers to the sky. So like that's actually what I understand about my being. And not just my humanness, but my being before my humanness and after my humanness, right? So that's actually honestly how I live. That's like how I move through the world. So in any material, I'm always aware of the fact that the material both chose me and I chose it. Like we came towards each other.
Right.
Right? So that means the rose quartz has been aware of me for a long time.
That's right.
And like, are you brave enough to look into the eyes, the things that are walking towards you, right? And so for me, there's like deep despair and deep regret in not having looked things in the eye. Like the material in the eye, right? And so also looking in the eye is to look something in the eye with faith, which is beyond the moment, right? So I'm always asking the work to do something. Like I make power figures. I'm literally alive here today, like as you know, because I made an object and I asked it to keep me alive, and it did. Yes. Right? And so that progresses forward, but it doesn't progress on the same level. It rises in the spiral. And so the rose court work, it's like connected to everything else, and specifically began working with it in the rose quartz boots at Mount Holyoke College Art Museum. I was asked to engage with the Skinner collection. It's a really problematic collection. They know that it is, and they chose two artists. One was me, one was a white artist, and they asked me, what would it mean to decolonize the collection? And I said, did you ask her that too? Yes. And they were like, and I said, okay, so I just like, be aware of who you're asking to do this labor.
That's right.
And so I said, let me play with it. Let me see. To decolonize collection would mean that it changes the every level of statistical reality of my existence. But no, it can't just be mine. It has to be everyone. And so what we did is, what I said is, like, it's not that we can actually decolonize anything, but we can be emancipated from the traps. Yes. We can be emancipated from the lies, and we can actually live in a conscious and deliberate daily state of liberty, which is the soul's right to breathe, right? And so students at Mount Holyoke College worked with me to come up with a series of prompts that went out to the entire Mount Holyoke community. And the prompts were to engage the heart, to give language to that which needed to be removed from the system so that one could move forward in a more emancipated form. And I got thousands of note cards back from this community, the deans, the janitors, professors, and they were anonymous. So you answer a very intimate question and put a card into a box. And those boxes came to me, and I synthesized everything. And there were boxes for people to give objects. So they gave shoes and clothes and jewelry and all this stuff. And so I stacked up all the cards, and there was just a number of people who had hidden sexual violence, who had things happen to them that they had never told anyone about. There were people who wrote to me about giving up babies that their families didn't know about. The biggest cards were people who had a really discordant and despairing experience with their own body. A lot of shame about their bodies. A lot of, just like one person was like, I just wish I was thinner. I'm obsessed with the idea that I could be thinner. It's like all these things. And somebody gave a pair of knee-high black riding boots in the box. And I thought about the work as like, if I could make a work of art that had the power to do anything, like what I wanted to do in relationship to these stacks of cards. And so I made the work as a medicine that if anyone comes into any proximity of it, even if you look at the image or if you're standing in front of it, the medicine will meet you where you need to be met. That's right. With it, right? And so I made this pair of boots that were covered in rose quartz, and they're called Walk in Beauty, which is a Dene poem, a Dene prayer that says, like, now I walk in beauty. Beauty is before me, beauty is after me, I am the beauty, right? And so I believe that existence is beauty, like you are here, your existence is really luminous and miraculous, and you are the sign, you are the wonder. And so I put that into this pair of boots. And then also in the tradition of my soul, I know that there's a lot of information in quartz, there's a lot of information in crystals. And what I have come to understand through several teachers over the last 8 years is that rose quartz actually holds the energy of creative, mothering, nurturing, loving connection and wholeness that actually keeps the universe together. Wow. That's the actual force of love. As Bell Hooks told us, love is always making more of itself, which is why the universe keeps expanding, right? We know that it is the force that holds the universe together, and you can ask it to do the work that meets the place of the human heart, right? And so when Tyree Nichols was killed in Memphis, and just like the sound of him crying out for his mother, and like she couldn't be, he died, he didn't make it. She didn't come. And so there's this unanswered cry to the mother. And I made this skateboard for him because he was, like I grew up in Los Angeles and I wanted to be a skateboarder and they were like, Black girls don't skateboard. Anyway, so this is a long answer to say that it is everything. And it's powerful. And so what I do, also understanding, like I grew up in Los Angeles in the 80s and 90s, there's a lot of street death and a lot of people dying of AIDS. And I recognized very young that the way we treat death in this culture is of a great disservice to our humanness and to our spirit. So when I was a little girl, I started to do these like little death rituals and memorials, especially like when there were drive-by shootings or when people would die of AIDS and there would be this instant turnaround in the media that they were horrible and monsters, this thing. And I was like, ooh, we're like, this is bad for us. Yes. Like I knew as like 6 or 7 years old, I was like, we gotta treat this death with the enormity of love that is the life. And so I will often make pieces in memorial. You've seen, like I post them on Instagram. And so Tyree Nichols, and I made a rose quartz portrait of George Floyd and Elijah McClain, because it's also unfathomable for me that they're not alive. And like I think that real reparation in this country would have to include resurrection. That's like, right. Like give us our people back. No. So there's a long answer for that, but it's everything. And I'm asking it, like I believe in the power of love. It's not flimsy to me at all. And so I use love as a material.
I mean, what a world, right? And how fortunate we are just to hear everything you said. So it's one thing, and I hope that if you all have not gone to the Frieze, I'll be going tomorrow. I would have gone already, but I just flew in today. But I hope you go to witness this because it was living through the screen of my phone, right? And what you just said about love as material, it speaks so much to the question that I wanted to pose. I thought about Patrisse, but it's really designed for you both because it is coming out of the space of love as well. And you're anticipating one of my questions about the skateboard dedicated to Tyree later on. In their poem, Not an Elegy for Mike Brown, Dinesh Smith, my dear kindred, opens the work this way. I am sick of writing this poem, but bring the boy, his new name, his same old body. How many times and across how many skies and measures of the universe have we been tasked to bring the boy, bring the girl, bring the woman, bring the man, bring the father, husband, brother, cousin, sister, aunt, grandmother, grandfather, uncle, aunt, to be remembered, to be blessed, to be looked upon as more than parts that have been destroyed. I lean into the work that you have done, Patrisse, and you, Vanessa, as I consider Dinesh's confessed exhaustion in that first line. I am sick of writing this poem. Yet the boy, in spite of that exhaustion, must be remembered. As the poet expresses, bring him and we will mourn him until we forget what we are mourning, and isn't that what being Black is about? Patrisse, as you captured in your book, when they call you a terrorist, you demand, bring the boy. And of course, Dinesh, dear kin, is remembering slain brother, son, graduate, college-bound Mike Brown. So his is an elegy, a memory, a call to action. But in your work, you're looking past the deaths that this nation state has sought to script of Black lives to demand of generations of lives that they will survive and thrive in this despite this nation state. And you've done this in the face of police brutality, police surveillance, police intimidation of you, your communities, your families. And you've woven a world of refusal to the narrative of Black death in pursuit of a life narrative. And I was wondering if you could talk about how that seed began in you and your work, and how it continues and how you sustain it.
I really could just sit up here and listen to the both of you, so I'm coming back to my own body. This moment was very, very powerful, so thank you. Thank you for giving us, the both of you, thank you for something about Black women where we just keep showing up and keep giving ourselves. It's very profound, and I feel like I'm witnessing it and experiencing it right now, so thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, team. It's always very weird for me, audiences. I love you that you're here, and also I feel like it's a community. And I know you're here to listen to us, but we're also listening to you. So thank you for showing up and being here. I also am from Los Angeles, born and raised in the 80s and the 90s and the early aughts. I'm still growing, still here. But I think the impact of a city and a county that was far more invested in locking up our bodies and killing us had grave impact on my childhood. The first, 10, 12 years of my life was just constant police surveillance, harassment. LAPD was a fixture in my neighborhood, in my community. The first raid, I was 4 years old. I remember it very vividly. And the experience of over-policing, the experience of surveillance, which we didn't call it that then. That's what happens to poor Black people. They're surveilled. They're, criminalized. It's only in the last, decade, 15 years where we've confronted that we've surveilled a generation of Black people. We've locked them up. We've destroyed their community. We've decimated the community. And even inside all of that, I was a very joyful kid. Very joyful. I have my own child now, and I see myself very much. We're very, very similar. He is not growing up in the same ways that I am, quite differently, very different experience. But I see that the child, he gets to be a child. I didn't get to be a child, but I was so joyful. I was still a child, right? So I was still so joyful and incredibly optimistic. And I just kept thinking and remembering at a young age, nobody deserves to live like this. And I was a big, big proponent of my imagination. So I spent a lot of nights in my bed just looking up, after my mom put us to bed, or my older brother put us to bed. My mom worked a lot. And just looking up at the ceiling and imagining a different world. It's the first first stages of my imagination practice was just being in my room and looking up and thinking about what could be different, and not just my own family, because especially when you're Black and poor, it's the community. So I was thinking about the evolution of our community and what could happen, what could support look like. And I think those early imagination sessions really helped build and propelled me towards art and activism. I don't see them as different things. Right. And inside of that evolution as an artist and activist organizer, I just kept reaching for more. And when I noticed that we as a collective could change systems, I was like, okay, great, that works. I'm gonna keep doing that. And I'm gonna keep doing that. And I'm gonna take on the sheriff's department. And I'm gonna take on the jail system. And I just kept calling us all in to imagine a new world that, you know, my child could live in, that my family could live in. And so I have to like really credit my, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old self with paving the road to my own liberation. Like I knew it very early on, and it was, and it only, you know, there was only just more proof as I used my imagination and asked us to use our collective imagination. And it's, I'm still incredibly optimistic, even in this very, very tragic and painful time. I still feel incredibly hopeful because I believe human beings have the capacity to be better, do better. And so I feel like it's a necessity for me to first and foremost remind myself what's possible, and then call on and beg for all of us to also imagine what's possible.
Thank you so much. I want to thank you for acknowledging, because it's so interesting. You said 3 things that really hit me. I mean, so much. But you said you didn't really have a childhood, yet you did have a childhood, and that you were joyful in that childhood, and then you thanked individually your 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, right? And acknowledging that each one of those selves offers something unique to who you are now. And I think it's a reminder for us, whether we are parents, mothers, fathers, aunties, teachers, leaders in any capacity, to remember that that child is already, I already think about this in my son, he's 9 years old. I always think he's 79, you know, I always think he's 90, right? When he was born, and he was, you know, the protests in Ferguson were happening when he was 2 weeks old. And I remember putting him on the boppy pillow, and he was so long that his legs flopped out over where most babies were curled up. And I remember talking to his father and saying, we're gonna have to teach him earlier than most other kids about how to keep himself safe, because when he's 12, he's gonna look 16.
Right.
And that's happening now. He's 9, but he's profiled already like he's 13, 14, 15. And this started when he was 2. In the public libraries of the Midwest where I used to live, that he was profiled, and he was believed that he should have been acting older.
Yes.
Because he was taller. And you write about this, right, in When They Call You a Terrorist, exactly what happened to Tamir Rice, exactly what happened to Trayvon, right? This way that our children are denied childhoods because they're criminalized and villainized and then executed as if, not just that they're criminals, because that's not even what this country does to criminals. Right. And you make that distinction really clearly and painstakingly in that book, that this is not what this country does to criminals. Criminals get taken to jail. Criminals get a trial. Criminals are not executed on the street. This is something very much scripted for Black bodies and Black lives intentionally, right? And so I want to thank you for honoring those child selves, because each step of the way they were making a decision that led you here and led us here. So thank you. And it's a reminder for us to do that too. I appreciate that. So in this year, 2024, I admit to you all, I've thought more about the preaching and the clearing by Baby Suggs Holy and Toni Morrison's Beloved than ever over my 30-year relationship with that book. For our conversation, I think about the piece that first called out to me from your new collection, Vanessa, Heart Overhead. I can't stop thinking about it, honestly. Baby Suggs, I hope y'all don't mind that I'm just gonna lean into this and then we're just gonna go with it. Baby Suggs Holy said to the women, men, and children who gathered to hear her call, "This is flesh I'm talking about here. flesh that needs to be loved, feet that need to rest and to dance, backs that need support, shoulders that need arms, strong arms, I'm telling you. And oh, my people out yonder, hear me, they do not love your neck, unnoosed and straight. So love your neck, put a hand on it, grace it, stroke it, and hold it up. And all your inside parts that they just as soon slop for hogs, you got to love them. The dark, dark liver, love it, and the beat and beating heart, love that too. More than eyes or feet, more than your life-holding womb and your life-giving private parts. Hear me now. Love your heart, for this is the prize. I think about Black women's, yeah, right.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Toni Morris and Audre Lorde. When I think about,
I'd like to read that.
oh, thank you for, look at you. Well, it felt like an embodiment, you know, it felt like, you know, I never think about Baby Six Holy or any Toni Morrison characters, even any of my characters as being characters. I realize that's a spirit and that that's a living abundance and that that's an ancestor getting our attention and announcing herself into the space and reminding us of something. I mean, in that book, Hallie buys his mother's freedom with, right? He works on Sundays. Can't remember how many years of Sundays it is, but it's Sunday after Sunday after Sunday after Sunday until he can buy her freedom, because he knew something that she didn't. As soon as she got into freedom, she heard her heartbeat. And she registered, that's my heart, that's mine. That's mine, right? Before that, she had no recollection, no understanding, no connection, you know, no mind-body connection that said anything about herself was hers, right? Even she starts to ask, you know, can I sing? And if I can, does it sound pretty? Just not even knowing what that's like not having any connection to joy, not having any connection, knowing somehow that it's possible, but not having it within herself that she could call her own. So reading that, I think that it made me think about, like, ask myself deeper questions about loving all those parts individually, intentionally, every day. Because that's what she was saying. Like, she's saying it has to be a practice, right? It has to be a practice, like a daily practice. It has to be, it's not just, you can't do this and not do this and be. Born from us and not, the families we create through love. And I guess I would love to speak for a moment how we care for the self. Yet, you know, I also think about Baby Six Holy, who was finally freed by a loving son just so she could feel what it felt like to have a free heart. So I suppose then, to kind of continue what you were saying earlier, Patrisse, this is really a liberation question, because ultimately Baby Six Holy sought to paint a portrait of communal liberation. And so what does manifested liberation look like for each one of you? What are the sounds of this liberation? How does it feel? What does it smell like? What is that world? If you put us in that world, what is it? What is it?
I have to hold that first.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Hold it. Yeah. That's how I feel.
Can we answer that at the end?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, well, this is a perfect time to for Audre Lorde, because I do want to bring Audre and Tony in together. And poetry is not a luxury, she wrote, as we become more in touch with our own ancient Black non-European view of living as a situation to be experienced and interacted with, and to respect those hidden sources of our power from where true knowledge and therefore lasting action comes, I believe that women carry within ourselves the possibility for fusion of these two approaches as keystone for survival. And we come closest to this combination in our poetry. For women, then, poetry is not a luxury. It is a vital necessity of our existence, end quote. And so I'm thinking about all the work in your new collection, Vanessa, and I feel like we're in such synergy, because what you said about the skateboard really does anticipate this question. I'm thinking about how you titled that piece. So this is exactly how it reads, and it's really astonishing to me, and I haven't been able to not think about it for over the past 11 days that this new work has been since Vanessa started to make it public. So this is the title. Quote, skateboard memorial to Tyree Nichols, who screamed out for his own mama to comfort him while the police were jumping on his back and taking his name out of his soul and making him dead with their own looseness of being, and in the brutality of this separation, unaliving him for no reason other than, well, or skateboard as grief. 2023, end quote. And I have more, and I'll say that in a minute, but I think I'm going to stop there and ask, how did that language make itself? Because it feels like the making of that language is right alongside and right within and so much a part of the sculpture too. And so different than what we come to know as, the write-ups that accompany artwork, right? It's not that. It seems like it's not interested in being that.
Right. So I think there's a way that I also, I'm a self-taught artist, so I do not have a degree in this, but I spend time in colleges and universities, and I find that people think things come from them. And which, yes. Solely. Right. And that you can stand on this authorship. I haven't thought about this a lot. It's the first time I'm saying that out loud in relationship to the question. But the reality that I exist within is I have strategically removed a lot of separation in my life, because I realized that that's what this is a really original violence in white supremacy in here, to separate you from everything, to separate you from nature. So to in dehumanization, you are also despiritualized, right? And so I have it's actually through the thank you. It's through so I was tender on the cliff of my own life, really considering do I continue forward with this breathing existence or shall I not? And the test that I put before myself was to see if I could just keep myself alive for 6 months doing what felt right, which seemed incredibly indulgent. When I tell people that, they're like, that's not how you live, you work hard. And I was like, I don't know, you should try it. See what happens. If you're in your day, if you do what feels right, if you rise when it feels right, if you speak when it feels right, and then what you find is that you can't always touch the feeling, that you can't actually feel your own feelings. So you gotta, I went through this process of turning down the world to turn up the volume on my own feeling. But what I did was I listened to Toni Morrison and Alice Walker read their books, because I had a couple books on tape. And I would listen to them over and over and over again in that 6 months. And so what I realized is, like, when you hear the sound of Toni Morrison's voice, she is not reading her words to you. She has become the thing itself.
That's right.
And so what I realize is, I experience being an artist as an entire, complete human and beyond human identity, right? It's complete, it's full. People ask me about my practice and my process. I was like, well, there's no start or stop. Like, it's not actually happening like that. Like, I respect, like, I can answer something a certain way, but the reality is I am always engaging in my humanness, in my heart, and in my world as fully and completely with every living ingredient that I can muster the courage to move into, which means then that I allow myself, as porously as Camille said yesterday, that we must be porous a lot in this work. I allow myself to become a channel. Like, I want to become the thing itself. I don't want to just make an object. I don't want to just move words around. I want to touch the mystery of my own heartbeat. Like, I do, like, every creation, like, I want to feel a miracle. Like, I do, like, I want to be in the wonder of that thing that happens when the ingredients are coming and moving around. Like, I want to levitate. And so what it is like, I will open all the channel locks. That's right. And so in the making, when the material is here, I'm listening. I listen to the inside of the inside of the inside. Right? I'm listening because there's sometimes objects come different ways. Sometimes I see it. Like, it exists already, and then I move towards, and the object moves towards me in time. And it's like making. But there is a way that I realized when I would listen to Toni Morrison's voice, I was like, something else is happening right now. She's not just reading to me. She is becoming the air. Like, it was something, Toni Morrison audiobooks, she read her own books. Yep. And she's doing something else is happening. And I was like, could that happen to me? Could I allow something else to happen to me? And it would happen. But this is old human technology. This is original human technology. This is indigenous women sitting in a circle, one tiny ass seed bead at a time, talking and moving the material and transforming and singing and praying and making the air that they will all breathe tomorrow. That's right? Inside of that process. So there is a way that I had an experience. I was standing on the street. It was the first time I knew that I had been occupied by a spirit. Totally. Because I was talking to somebody. We were in Wilkinsburg. It was Wilkinsburg, and I was talking to my former drug dealer girlfriend, and like her former drug dealer girlfriend. And we were talking about ruthlessness, which what we would also spiritually call soul loss, right? And never before had anything like this come out of my mouth. And I said, so it's going to be really important for you to watch your heart. I said, be mindful of your heart. Pay attention to your heart. And I'm saying it, and I'm like, what? Like, what is the heart? Like, I didn't recognize it. Just like came through, and it was so clear. And so I could find that frequency and open up the channel with language. And so for me, what I also understand about language, the poem I wrote, If My Hands Were Anything Other Than Hands, I wrote that to cure my friend of cancer, because somebody said there's life and death in the power of the tongue, and sound and vibration do this. And I was like, oh, like, I wonder if that would work. Like, I wonder if it would work to cure things. Like, I'm going to play. And so I would play with sound, and I would play with words, not for the sake of the word, but for the sake of the purpose and the outcome on the other side of it. And so that it is that way. But it's also terrible to keep watching Black people die on video. It is like quite horrendous to listen to grown Black men screaming out for their mama, and then the world just done moved on, and nobody care, you go get some coffee. It's not affecting people. And so, like, there is ways that I had to be like, something happened.
That's right.
Something happened.
That's right. And
it touched me, and I'm connected to it. I do not have the luxury.
That's right.
To be like, he wasn't mine too, right? And so inside of that, it is like a dimensional process, because like, you ever been outside of the country when there's a tragedy and they go into mourning, national mourning? Yeah. They collectively be like, something has happened to us all.
Yes.
It's like that plane crash in Sweden. 13 people died. Everybody went in the morning. Something has happened to us all.
That's right.
We will slow down. We will close the shops early. And so we don't do that here. Like, people shrug hard when Black people die. And so I have to do, there's like work to be done. And there's nobody like always guiding us into that work. Like, how do you not succumb to despair? Like, you listen to, like, you watch the police shoot Tamir Rice 1.2 seconds after they get out the car. You go get something to eat and the world just sort of moves on. Like, that's eerie to me. I'm experiencing that a lot all the time, every day now. And so what it is I ask my soul to bring the technology of rightness forward. So it's not me, but it is like availability. It's like quite mysterious to me sometimes. It is quite profound. It's quite magical. It's quite like deeply, deeply, deeply loving. And I don't always know where it comes from, and I'm okay with that.
I'm astonished because I'm just going to read more of how Vanessa describes the materials for skateboarders' grief. Grief, salt, sore throat from all the screaming. Shoes wore out in the soles from marching and begging. Then a beautiful son gone, a beautiful son, and his name become a hashtag in the ever-expanding digital memorials of children killed by. I don't really know what to say, y'all, okay? Heartbreak, fear, rage, tears, crane hood ornament, rhinestones, adhesives, cloth, rose quartz for how the entire universe is held together, like how a womb holds an entire human together within an entire human.
How do we account for the miracle? How else do you account for the miracle and then the severing of the miracle? How are we going to act like it wasn't a miracle and it got severed? Like, we do it all the time. But it's dangerous for us to do that. Like, it is not helping us as human beings in our wholeness to act like, one, that there's a separate miracle between human beings, and then to not acknowledge when the miracle is severed. That's deeply harmful to our dimensional wholeness. And we're living inside of that right now.
I agree.
So my only prayers are, like, everything, I turned everything in the universe into a prayer.
And that connects to what you wrote in When They Call You a Terrorist, Patrisse. It's this meditation on Black folk lineage, the universe, and magic, based on a talk by Neil deGrasse Tyson. The universe is in us. We human beings are literally made out of stardust. And you wrote, I have seen it since I was a child. The magic, the stardust we are in the lives of the people I come from. And this, I think, is what Audre means when she wrote in that same essay, Poetry is Not a Luxury. Our children cannot dream unless they live. They cannot live unless they are nourished. And who else will feed them the real food without which their dreams will be no different from ours? I was wondering if you could talk about that stardust lineage, if you could talk about that.
Yes.
Yes, I can. And every time Vanessa talks, I just need to take a moment.
Why?
Because it's just big. It's vast. And it calls us in to be with ourselves. So I'm just like,
Thank you.
yeah, I feel like I'm in meditation, and then I'm like, oh, I gotta answer a question. Hold on.
I just want to say, my mother made a quilt when we were kids, and it's called "Behold, We Are the Stuff of Stars." So I'd like really like to know that you're a Los Angeles Black girl, and I'm a Los Angeles Black girl, and like you knew about stardust. Like, I'm like, yay! I feel
Magic.
less like I feel like companioned in a way?
Yes.
Okay.
And Dr. Tameka, honestly, you should just do this all the time. I've never actually been on a panel so eloquently presented, laid out, all the writings, your voice.
Thank
I'm
you.
just like fangirling up here. I'm like,
Thank you.
Yes. So raise your hand if you know that we're made of stardust. Okay, well, if you didn't, we're made of the stars, you guys. It's amazing. And
T-shirt. we're made of the stars.
amazing. It's something that so I grew up Jehovah's Witness, quite intense. And I knew, like, from a very young age, like, this ain't it for me. Like, this is not the tradition, this isn't it for me. So I was very much longing and searching. And so when I learned about evolution, I had to teach myself about it very quietly. And it was kind of my own little, like, secret understanding, you know, we're actually made of the stars. Like, and as I grew up and got older and really fell in love with the universe, like celestial beings, I eventually was no longer Jehovah's Witness and just became enamored with the stars. And in a tradition that I practice called Ifa, our spiritual community is, in Yoruba, it's called Egbe, and that our spiritual community is actually the stars. Those are our family members, and the stars are actually what keep us, reminding us about who we are. And so I really wanted to open up When They Call You a Terrorist. I wrote When They Call You a Terrorist as an intervention book. It's because I was, and many of us in BLM were being called terrorists. And so I wanted to write something to remind myself who I was, but also remind all the little girls, little poor Black girls, mostly in LA, but around the country and the world, who we are, who we truly are. And there's something really heinous about your image, your lasting image or voice or words being filmed on a police video camera and then aired to the world. There's something really heinous about that. And so the opening of the book is truly a reminder of what we are made of and what we truly are and who we truly are, and what a powerful opportunity that we get to look up at the sky and see ourselves. That's just it's so powerful to me. And it's I remember one of my first thoughts. My son was just born when I was writing the book, and was 2 when the book came out. So I just remember thinking, what would I want him to read, and what would I want him to know? And yeah, it will never get old to me that we're made of stardust. That every part of our body is made up of this vast universe. It's quite special.
And all I could keep thinking is, you would have to, in so many ways, believe that and honor it and live that way to fight a pronouncement of death that has been an onslaught continuously over your life and your family's lives and community. And it's so easy to forget that brightness. It's so easy to forget that. And the fact that you have held on to it with intention, and that you could speak about it with passion and clarity and love. And then even the fact that you asked, so many times we dismiss we think stuff is small, but it's not, right? When you said, how many of you know that? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, that's call and response. And so by putting that call out there, it manifests a response that says, well, if you didn't know that, you know it now. And then what's the responsibility? That's the first question that came to me. But it's not just the responsibilities. What right do you have? If you are right, if you are shining and you are made of something that was meant to shine, that has always shined since the beginning of time and will shine when time is no more, how can somebody decide when your life ends? How can the state make that decision, right?
But also, I just want to say, how is there no reckoning with what that does to you?
That's right.
To take that life, to cut that.
I mean, it comes back to what you were saying earlier about how can we just move on, right? How can we hear George Floyd and just move on? How can we know that there was a space where Trayvon was alive and then he wasn't, and then we just all move on, right? Like, how isn't that, what does that do? Toni Morrison talked about this, right? When she said, what racism does, she said, it feels crazy. It is crazy, right? Like, it is that. She said there's something, right, bereft. There is something in the psyche, right? And she said the same thing that you were saying when the question was asked, how do we decolonize this? You said, she said, stop, leave me out of it. She said, it's my opinion that white people have a very serious problem, and they need to start thinking about what they should do about it. Leave me out of it, right? Take me out of that, right? So if you are a person who practices racism and you practice white supremacy, then that is not for me to solve. That's not for me to figure out how to help cure you of your insanity and your illness. And so
we say that that's also the cause of suffering. That if I do think that I can enter into your karma and cleanse it, like, it's actually your curriculum, it's your work, and it causes suffering. It is a creation of suffering that there's any idea that anybody else can do that work for you. Like, do you?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I hear you completely. As I was preparing for this, I was thinking, Patrisse, that so much of your work has taught us how to read the Black body as literary and legacy, as timeless text, as stardust and sequins, surviving from slave ships to classroom to dark streets to broad daylight to life and life more abundantly. As I was reading the language in your work, I found myself standing up in a question. How do we pronounce across histories to people who want to see us dead that not only will we live, but we will thrive? How do we continue to serve our communities by teaching a literacy that counters white supremacy, which is the lie that Black lives do not count, do not matter, do not deserve breath? I know you live it and you teach it and you model it through protest, through organizing, through art, through dream making and manifesting of a new, bold world. But when we get down to the word, how do we counter the narrative of oppression to sing a song of liberation?
And a beautiful way to ask the question. I think what's coming up for me right now is we have to honor all the parts of us being here on this planet, specifically in this country, is a kind of crazy making that you can only make meaning of when in community. I think you can only make meaning of when being in action, being in love. I stopped feeling disembodied when I started to honor all the parts of myself. Part of what white supremacy and patriarchy and homophobia and all the things do is it requires us to be disembodied. It requires us to forget about the parts of ourselves that are so necessary and important. I am a firm believer that we have to feel it all. And when we feel it all, we get to name what we're feeling, but we also get to name our needs through those feelings. And part of naming needs is not just our individual needs, which are incredibly important, but also like, how do we change the conditions? What are the collective needs? And part of the work of living in this culture is to keep us away from the feelings, so we keep ourselves numb, so we don't name the needs, so we don't take action, so we don't change the conditions, so we just keep perpetuating the same cycles of hell. And so feeling is hard, especially in this place. But we have to. And we have to feel in community, and we have to hold each other and love each other and care for each other and show up for each other. I'm an abolitionist, so part of that is challenging the ways that we punish ourselves, and that we're then taught to punish others. And the best thing we can do to challenge all of this is to love ourselves and love each other, care for ourselves and care for each other, kind of radical love that so many of our ancestors did and wrote about and acted on. I just feel like I'm part of that legacy, and I'm so grateful for them, for those texts at such an early age where I can challenge what was socialized in me, the compartmentalization, the disembodiment, and where, bell hooks asked us to lead with love, to be in our rage and to transmute it. And, Audrey, thank God for her. And so I just feel like I am trying to honor that legacy every day by showing up as my full self, the messiness too, often in public. And we live in a white supremacist public that Black people are not allowed to be messy, Black women especially. We are sacrificed publicly. And so part of my practice is to keep showing up. Keep showing up and keep being present and keep giving myself the room and spaciousness to be fully alive. Because I deserve it. And we all deserve it. And to be fully alive is to feel it all.
Beautiful. What's so amazing is that you moved to through responding to that, you just created a space of peace. I felt it. I don't know if anyone else did, but by the time you got to the end, there was this like beautiful presence of peace that I felt. And that I think that peace is associated with permission, you know, the divine permission to feel everything, to show up messy, to show up in a white supremacist patriarchal space, any space that just not trying to love you, right? And then love yourself. It is a radical act of revolution and resistance and abolition. And I really appreciate you for adding that to my own self-identification, because that is what I'm always trying to do, but I don't think I had that language until I encountered your work and encountered your insistence to use it. You know what I mean? And I just want to thank you for that profoundly. Thank you so much. Are y'all ready to come back to my question about liberation? Well, I think you.
I thought about it.
Yeah.
I took a breath. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, uh-oh.
Do you want,
Two mics.
do you want to bring it forward again, the question?
Sure. Yeah, the question was, what does liberation look like to you? What does it sound like if you could create your vision of liberation?
I can.
Yes.
Yes.
And what would that look like? Does it have a sound? Does it have a smell? Does it have a space?
The first thing that it looks like is none of my tax dollars, none of the energy of my people are going to killing. First thing it looks like is a ceasefire in Palestine, just like immediate cessation of active accumulation of death and violence, and then immediate global support to the regions and the peoples who have been taxed by the brutality and the greed and the lies and actually like the myth specifically of this democracy. So we're looking at Congo, we're looking at Sierra Leone, like actually like immediate flooding of resources to places, right? And so it's like triage. Mm-hmm. But then a different existence, for me is an existence where humans have heart-brain coherence, where there is no longer this sort of like enormous spotlight on intellectual prowess and the thinking mind as a way to make the world. Right? And so then a world where humans are activating their heart and their brain coherently is slower. It's a slower world, it's a softer world. It's a world with less freeways, actually. And so, but I have to say, the idea that we are the earth, I think that there are some things that are going to be taken out of our hands, right? There are ways that the earth is going to take things back. There are ways that the earth is going to continue evolving as a living entity that is, it is not going to come from human engineering necessarily, the full shape of a new world. Our heart will have to meet the earth again.
I hear you.
Right? And it's happening all the time. And it is, our hearts have to meet each other also, again, which is painful. But we could get through it, we could do that. And so, yeah, that's where the future is. That's it. The future is the human heart meeting the earth again, and the earth being met, and us meeting one another's hearts. And that looks like a lot of different things. That looks like masculinity taking like a totally different dance on the planet, right? And it looks like actually fully respecting childhood. Right? And it looks like completely different educational structures, like how we learn. Like children will return to teaching adults in a sit where we sit together.
That's right.
You know, and so like I can see those things because they're happening already. Like they're happening in pockets. Like they happen in pockets, like mutual aid, the community paramedics, like the harm reduction. Like we don't hate you. We not pushing you out of the community. We not shaming you for the addiction. Like it's happening, and like it will continue to happen. But something's happening with the earth, like the planetary body. So there are some things that are out of our engineering, which is good. Yeah, which is good. It's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
There's more dancing. There's more collective dancing in the future, more making music and sound as medicine, as a body. It's a lot, yeah. These are all, actually, this is also a world we've seen before. That's right. Like it has been before, right. Yeah.
Sound is medicine. You said we have to meet our hearts again.
Yeah, we actually have to meet our own heart, right? So just like that, like I'm gonna work every Sunday to free my mom, and in freedom she could hear her heart again.
That's right.
Right? And so when we talk about like a process to liberation, some of it is slowing down and getting quiet enough to pay attention to yourself again. Right? And then you can pay attention to yourself superficially, and then you gotta start listening in layers. Right, and paying attention to that, and paying attention to how you feel, and then acting on certain feelings, right? Especially if they're creative. Like, do you have the desire to paint something? Do you have the desire to make a mark? Like, lend yourself to the creative inclination that you have. And then inside of the process of creativity, like what's happening in your brain is deeply nourishing, and it is a completely generative ecosystem for world making when you're actually creating something, right? And so, but you have to feel that to go to that place. But we live in a culture that has deeply shamed creative people and deeply shamed the idea that you can make a fully creative life. But that's actually returning. Like people are taking that back for themselves. And it's like we're calling ourselves forward. Our future selves are calling ourselves forward. It's irresistible.
I love that. Thank you. Patrisse?
I don't know if I have much to add to that.
Speak.
Yeah, I think that feels complete for me too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
We're here together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I feel like this is a moment when I want to open up for questions, comments, and thank you for being such a fantastic audience. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate just more on?
Can you tell us your name?
Yes, that was kind of. Yes. Your name is Jay Honey?
Jaylani.
I was about to be like, Jay Honey? What? Beautiful. All right, all right.
I live in Georgia. What part?
I'm from Memphis.
Okay.
I just wanted you to elaborate more on the heart and brain coherence. Like, what's the definition of that?
Okay, so one, it's a living thing, right? I can talk, I can give words to it, but actually talking about it is something that's going to happen to your heart and it's happening to your brain, just like in the discussion. So open your heart to whatever follows this and is here, right? So there is, in this Western culture, a primacy placed on intellectual prowess, placed on the thinking brain, and one of, which means you're silencing other parts of your being, right? But we actually know it's like silencing specifically on this land of this place has been like systemic brutality, right? And it's the taking of the body, the taking of the tongue, sometimes literally. One of the other brutalities to this was that it was illegal for enslaved people to learn how to read or write, right? And so heart-brain coherence is returning to an original human technology of the truth that being is knowledge. Being is knowledge. So as you move through the day, as you move through the world, if you feel yourself start to tick in anxiety and think, I have to do this, I should do this, I should do this, sit in your being. and be the knowledge of your being. Pay attention to that and listen to that. Feel your body, right? And then so if we took a brain scan in that place, we would see these like sort of shifting like measurements. And so heart-brain coherence is something that it's an experience, it's an aliveness, it's a way of being in connection and communication with nature also, right? So you know about forest bathing, how the trees are giving you medicine. You come into the forest, the trees are listening, they're feeling you. They are tasting of the hormone and the chemical and the sweat that's coming off your body, and then they are offering you this living medicine. So it is to be in the one, to return into that, right? And so heart-brain coherence is it's original human technology. Yes, it's an experience. Yes.
Any other questions or comments?
What's your name, Mom?
I'm Yashida. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I just recently moved to Kansas City from New Orleans after living there for about 5 years for a curatorial fellowship.
Where's the fellowship? At the Nelson Atkins?
The Charlotte Street Foundation.
Okay.
Yeah. It is really hard, like, not being in the South. Like, really hard. I guess my question is, at what moments, I think there's, like, a lot of conversation that I hear about the need for ethically directed, like, rage. I guess my question is, under what circumstances does it actually transcend? Like, you know, are we talking about like the utility of a fight or just the fight for space? You know, like it's like the idea of anger or rage is like emotions frozen in time, but how are we bending time to direct it in other places? Because I think there's multiplicity in being. I also think there's like anger kind of for me is like the multiplicity of process trying to happen in like a pressure cooker.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's important, first and foremost, to just recognize the contours of our rage. And, you know, what I was talking about earlier around just feeling and giving it spaciousness. Earlier I talked about I was very joyful. I also had a lot of rage. I was a very, very, I was angry. And as I look back at that small child, I'm grateful for the big feelings I had. I didn't have a lot of adults helping me shape those feelings. But rage to the current situation or the life that we've lived is a very normal response. Let's just like actually normalize rage. There was a time in history where women being rageful landed them in psychiatric facilities. There was a full-on diagnosis called hysteria. No, rage is like a necessary human emotion to conditions that create that emotion. So that's like first and foremost, like feel the rage. For me, I can't tell you what to do with your rage. I can't tell you where to go with it, but I'll tell you what I've done with mine. I have been an incredibly active being through activism, through art, through community building, through building with people who can see me. I'm a big fan of, I'm from California, so, you know, we work with crystals and, you know, we go to the acupuncturist, like, but the one thing that I knew very early on is don't let the rage fester. That's when it makes you sick. Any emotion, truly, festering. There needs to be outlets, there needs to be expression, there needs to be, the visual I have is like creeks and rivers and places and spaces where it can overflow, and containers where it can overflow. And so finding that for yourself, and what does that look like? Where does that live for you? But don't try to disappear the rage. Don't try to hold in the rage, because I heard you name the pressure cooker. It doesn't have to be like that. And there are many ways to let it flow over. It's quite important. The last resource I will give you, because I worked with rage a lot as a young person, and in my early adulthood, because it was a primary emotion that when I felt it, I literally had no control over it. And it was dangerous. It was dangerous for me, it was dangerous for people around me. Like, I tried to get in fights a lot. Like, it was a lot. And I remember being 21 years old and being like, okay, I almost fought someone at a party who called me a faggot. And I was like, okay, Patrisse, can't be fighting people at parties. Like, we gotta figure something out. And I came across Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Buddhist teacher who's passed. He ended up becoming my teacher. And I read his book on rage. It was the first time where I felt like someone's reading was acknowledging the rage, but also giving me tools to cultivate it and transmute it into something that I felt good about, something that I felt that I didn't feel shame around. And so I want to offer that to you.
Will you repeat that name?
Yes, Thich Nhat Hanh. And once this is over, maybe the bookstore has it, or we can ask them to buy it. But he's a very special, he's a Buddhist teacher. He survived the Vietnam War. Him and MLK met multiple times. He was a civil rights leader. He was created a meditation practice called mindfulness meditation. And he had a center here in San Diego.
I wanted to ask you, just because you mentioned so many cities that I've lived in. I mean, I live outside of Atlanta now. I just came back from the AWP conference in Kansas City, and now we're here. It just feels like there's something happening, right? I lived in New Orleans for 5 years as a college student, and I worked there for a year. You said it's hard not being in the South, and I was just wondering, what is it that you're finding to be hard about that?
I think what's hard about it is, I think it'd be easy to say like the familiarity is gone, but I don't feel that way. I just feel that it's not around me, like the things that, like if you think about your environment as like resource density, I can feel that has shifted, and that's hard. But also, I think I'm learning that so much of my autonomy has come from like being raised in that. And I don't know, I think I consider myself, like, for better or for worse, someone who is like self-possessed, self-righteous, and I find that like my humility comes from like having grown up where other people were allowed to do that around me, and now I'm in places where it's like I'm just almost like irritated that I have to even like get bored of the idea that we're just like not, that I'm in places where I'm fundamentally not compatible, but I'm also realizing like I'm in places where it's not about me, you know, where like the things that I'm willing to do out of curiosity, like I don't know like how that's gonna ignite other things yet, if that makes sense. And I think like one thing that I've like really been thinking a lot about Kansas City is that it's the place where they perfected redlining, but you know, people talk so much about Atlanta now, but we didn't even have 1 million people before the year 2000 that lived there, and now there's 6. And it's like people have seen all this different money get pumped into it. You know, like the belt line is actually a reference to the black belt. And it's, you know, like I think seeing I feel like in a way I've traveled back in time, but just to a different place. Like Kansas City and all the segregation really reminds me of what a segregated version of Atlanta before or right after the Olympics would have looked like. And I think people forget that, like, the neighborhood pockets of Atlanta was built on segregation money before other things were deciding to invest into the infrastructure. It was a thing that was invested in itself. And I grew up with just a black mother, but I always find it really interesting, like with other Latinos who like go to places where they don't have this understanding that the Southern history in America is like the genesis for the imperial history of the global South. And so having a black mother from Puerto Rico and like growing up there, I feel like no meant just do things a different way. No didn't mean no. And now I'm hearing like no means like no a lot. And I think it's just making me like irritated. like I'm not necessarily like deeply angry, but I'm deeply offended. You know? So I think and then also like being from Atlanta and like seeing outsiders come in and then moving to New Orleans where like the relationships I built there, like it didn't come from a place of distrust, it just came from a place of like difference. Like I know that people who are from New Orleans, like they're the biggest gatekeepers for themselves. And I don't think I ever like really seen that before until I moved there. So I feel like each pocket of the South really has a way of like self-ownership. And so it's just hard to keep going to places and being an outsider. Yeah.
I really appreciate your response, and I feel enriched by it and enlivened by it. And we can talk more about this outside, but my sense is that you should be making something in whatever space that you're in. I don't know if that's language, I don't know if that's storytelling, I don't know if that's a novel or poetry collection or an essay or you writing music or you learning how to knit or sew, or I don't know what that is for you, but there's something that seems to be happening across generations within you intellectually and spiritually. And as you migrated to all these places, it feels like you're almost like you're a walking archive. And like now you're trying to, it's like you want the place you're in to make sense to you with all this archival knowledge. And I don't know you personally, but I'm not sure if you were meant for that. I don't know if you were, as the saying goes, I don't know if you built like that. I feel like you built for something else. And I feel like that is to create your own system. And so if what you're in doesn't feel right to you, it's because it's not of you. Like you can't fit into a space that's not really, when you're meant to be to manifest something so much more than that, which is your own knowledge and your own understanding and your own, to be very honest with you, your own institution. I mean, I really do think that when we get to the point where we're manifesting institutions that's really, to me, so much of what liberation looks like. And it doesn't have to look like what we understand institutions to be either, right? It doesn't have to do that. It doesn't have to be a source of oppression. And I think that that might be, to me, because I'm hearing so much angst in you, I've felt that before. And if I'm reading it, if I'm sensing it, it's just because I've been there so many times. And in none of those instances was it about me getting out. You're never gonna get that thing from the thing you're looking for in, because it's coming from you. It's just like what Vanessa said, right? When talking about moving towards the work, and the work is moving towards you, and then looking at it, like looking at that. It's so easy to not to look over here, look to the left, look to the right. When you're looking at the thing that's coming to you, choosing you, which is what love does. See, I was hoping that would never happen, but thank you. But I feel like that, that to me speaks exactly to what she was saying, is that what is the thing that you need to look in the eye? I want to thank the amazing staff of Beyond Baroque. Thank you, Timmy. Thank you, Sound. Thank you, Yvonne, for introducing us. And I want to thank these beautiful, brilliant, daring panelists and sister friends, Patrisse Cullors and Vanessa. And I am Dr. Tameka Cage Conley, and this has been such a pleasure. And please go to see the Frieze tomorrow. Go to see Vanessa's work. The last day is March 4th, so you have until Monday.
One more, just a question, more so just saying you guys suggestions on books to read. Yeah. What is some good book suggestions that you guys have on just being a woman?
Ships at a distance have every man's wish on board, right? Their eyes are watching God's or no Hurston. I mean, you know, that to me is the fact that she knew that Black women and Black girls deserved that book and would need that book, right? The fact that she really, I mean, I don't want to spoil it for you, but Janie's journey ends up exactly in the place that Vanessa and Patrisse and I have been talking about this whole time, right? And Zora Neale Hurston knew that in a time when she wasn't supposed to have that knowledge. Like, she wasn't supposed to know that we would need a love song to ourselves. That no matter how hungry you were for somebody else to love you, that you had to do that work for yourself. And that she made it, she forced it. And you'll understand what I mean when you read the book, but she forced it, she demanded it, that Black girls and Black women love themselves, no matter how much they yearn to be loved intimately. So I would start there if I were, you know what I'm saying? And All About Love by Bell Hooks. Read them together, side by side, and anything by Lucille Clifton. Lucille Clifton. Start with Good Woman.
Do you know the poem, Won't You Celebrate With Me?
Yeah.
Do you know that poem?
For every...
Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? I had no model, born both non-white and woman. What did I see to be except myself? I made it up here on this bridge between starshine and clay. Won't you celebrate with me
the fact that every day
something has tried to kill me and has failed?
Yeah. I would say a book to read is yourself. I would say keep a little book in your purse and trust your instincts and write things down and look at the world as though it, first what I would say is consider looking for other realities in the world and then pay attention. So I believe that there are things that want to come out of you and you should pay attention to them. That's the street.
That's right.
Great book. I have started that.
Was there a question for you?
Yeah, I would love
have to read another Lucille Clifton poem, so we all speak.
Oh, please.
And I would like to read it to you in response to what you shared. And the poem is called Birthday. Birthday by Lucille Clifton. Today we are possible. The morning green and laundry sweet opens itself and we enter blind and mewling. Everything waits for us. The snow kingdom, sparkling and silent in its glacial cap. The cane fields shining and sweet in the sun-drenched south. As the day arrives with all its clumsy blessings, what we will become waits in us like an ache.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all so much. There's a reception, and then Patrisse is signing books, and Frieze tomorrow, Vanessa German. Thank you both so much.
Thank you so much.